What advice do you have for our education tech executives and our leaders when it comes to essentially selling and managing this particular problem?
Yeah, I think we pretty much hit on all these. I mean, again, I would say um, start early. So that doesn't necessarily mean literally try to achieve the standard, but as much as I think anybody who's in a position to be thinking about some of these problems and their impact on both organizational practice and your ability to sell whatever it is you're selling. Doesn't matter if you're a nonprofit, for profit, whatever. Somebody's trying to buy or adopt something. Um, you should have some familiarity with the dimensions of this space. There's absolutely no doubt that we saw a trend emerging where 5 years ago we would get, you might almost call them casual questions about, you know, do you guys protect student privacy, or are you compliant with some of the accessibility standards that are out there? But it was pretty loose, and it was clear that it was capturing the mindset of people who are in a position to make a decision about whether they should adopt a particular, sorry, we're getting feedback from coolant, or not. And anyway, over as the years progressed, they started to become more onerous. We would see expectations of, oh, well, you have to have filled out, for example, a BPAT or a HECVAT if we're talking about accessible technology, or you have to have filled out, show me like the ISO certification and so on. And it was just like the writing was on the wall. And for us, it really was, okay, what is going to be the trigger? And the trigger was this, in particular, this one engagement that came through. And yeah, and I mean, unless you're really ahead of the game, or you maybe just happen to have somebody who's already done this a number of times on your staff or whatever it is. I mean, I personally think it would be pretty crazy to try to handle a lot of that work, kind of understanding, again, that right sizing and managing all the sort of moving parts without a partner. Yeah, like StrikeCraft.
Thanks, Rash. So I got a couple questions in. I'm going to take one of them here, I think, for us, Rash,
Mhm.
which is, as a technology organization, what can you do to delay the requirements that are coming down? So a lot of customers ask us this because we do get desperate calls every once in a while, and the story goes a little like, oh, we landed the biggest deal that we've ever got an opportunity for, but they're not going to sign until we achieve some cybersecurity milestone. And there is a number of things we can do right up front. The first thing is to, and I think the most important thing is to show that you're on the journey. And I think that that was part of the communication with North Carolina, right, Arash?
Right. Yes. Yeah. So we technically had a conditional authority to operate. The schedule was not ours, right? The schedule was imposed by policy. And so I think it's difficult, right? Because people are in different positions in terms of what the consequence would be should, for example, we not achieve
Yeah.
a given level of compliance, or if they give authorization to operate even if you don't meet all the requirements. You get the idea. So there's this whole sort of risk reward thing that has to be managed. But at the end of the day, everybody who was involved understood that there was an external constraint, which is that the the politicians in the state had passed a piece of legislation that said thou shalt have XYZ in place by such and such a date.
Yeah.
And so everybody was interested in figuring out, how do we make that true within the obligations we have? And so we obtained essentially a conditional authorization to operate so we could hit those deadlines, which everybody wanted. But then that really did put the burden on us. Like, we didn't have a lot of wiggle room at that point. Like, it was going to be very, very challenging for everybody
Mhm.
if we didn't reach that certification by the date that was imposed on that agreement.
So some of those milestones that our customers typically go through where they can buy time essentially to achieving an actual audit. One of the first things that we do is the risk assessment. And
Mhm.
then we start to look at what types specifically of policies and procedures make sense for your organization. And we'll do an early penetration test. And so doing the penetration test can provide a lot of initial validity in the technology infrastructure and how it's functioning.